Okay, we'll kick things off here. Hey, everybody. I'm Jim. Let's take two here.
You paused. I thought you wanted me to say
It was a dramatic pause. All right.
I'm not at that.
Okay, we'll take it from the top. Hey everybody, I'm Jim Schneider, and this is my podcast, Work in Progress, where I talk to my guests about the work they do and why they do it. And oh boy, am I happy, extremely happy to have a podcast episode with this gentleman right here, my very good friend, Mr. Pete Stedman. And I'm going to let Pete introduce himself to you and describe what it is he does, however you want to introduce yourself. This is your moment to do that.
I'm Pete Stedman. I work in international education for about 15 years as a teacher, and now I help create resources to help other teachers. And then my wife and I are more recently starting to do like a sideline, a weekend gig of selling some art and art-related paraphernalia and used books.
Very cool. So first off, I have to ask you what art-related paraphernalia means. Can you draw that out?
It could be stuff like this T-shirt made by the artist Brendan McAlinden, and we're selling signed, numbered prints of his, along with some original artworks. So art-related paraphernalia would be maybe stuff like a T-shirt.
Okay. Hats? Apparel?
Could be.
Bookmarks?
Could be. I think the idea is we really like art. And, we want to get people art at different price points in a different capacity so everyone has access to cool stuff.
Yeah, very cool. Remind me of this artist's name again? What's his name?
Brendan McAlinden, B-Mac on Instagram.
Oh, B-Mac, and he's here in Chicago.
He's a Southsider, yeah.
Local fellow, okay. How did you discover him?
I just really liked his art. I actually saw a huge painting of his in a brewery. I like a brew pub, and I asked the people whose work it was because they didn't have it labeled, and that's how I found him. Then I ended up buying a couple of his paintings, and then we have mutual friends in the end, and really cool guy. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I got to buy some prints or something, some paraphernalia.
Yeah, some paraphernalia.
Cool. So the first thing that you mentioned was that you worked in international education for 15 years, past 15 years.
About that, yeah.
And just to set the record straight for the viewers, that's how you and I met. Pete and I were working together at a school in Korea, Yongtong, Korea.
Yes.
Many moons ago. And that was your, that was your first experience teaching and working abroad, right?
Yes.
So how did you get to Korea?
Panic. I graduated college with an English major, which I'm not one of those people who will denigrate that. I think it's an important thing. I'll denigrate the world for not embracing more English and philosophy majors. But I couldn't find a job. And another one of our mutual friends had a contact over in Korea, and I threw an application out there, and I got a call back. And I haven't been getting callbacks, but you know how that is. Yeah. I got lots of callbacks. And it was very easy to say yes. It seemed exciting, way to earn money and travel. So I was all in on that.
Mm-hmm. And that was the first of many years teaching abroad.
Yeah, so I went on and got a master's in literature, doubled down, and a master's in education. And then I started working in international schools. So teaching high school English lit, mostly. To kids who have to live abroad because their parents work. So,
So tell me some of the other countries that you've lived and worked and studied in.
Sure. Yeah, I was in Sweden for a solid 5 years, and Kazakhstan for 2, Argentina for 4 in Buenos Aires, and Brazil. My last year abroad was in Brazil, where I met my wife.
Who has been on this podcast?
She was on this podcast. Better, more interesting guest than myself.
We'll see.
She's got a great resume. She's got stuff to beat her resume.
Well, I can tell you this, no pressure, but Paula's podcast has the highest number of views of all the podcasts that I've made.
How many views? Is that?
I mean, it's going up by the minute, so,
Well, my mother, shout out to my mother, and my godmother, both, I believe, watched that podcast.
Oh,
So
good.
new audience members came in.
Yeah, we brought some others in, too, thanks to Paula.
Cool.
But you're going to have to, you're now in direct competition with her to see who.
Oh, well, people like her much more than me, so you're not getting new viewers out of this. Sorry.
Well, you're likable. You're likable enough. That's what Obama said to Hillary, right? You remember that?
No. But what happened to Hillary when she ran? Was she likable enough?
There was, well, we don't have to, we don't have to get into all that. Yeah, so you spent a number of years abroad. Lund,
Yes.
Sweden.
Yeah.
I went to visit you there. That was a lovely little town. And where were you in Kazakhstan?
At the time, it was called Astana. Now it's called Nur Sultan, I believe. It's the capital.
Name change. Oh, I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
What happened there?
It's named after the democratically elected president. He'd been the ruler of Kazakhstan going back to the Soviet days. He was he was in charge of that region for the USSR, and then he won every democratic election with an astounding 99% of the vote.
Impressive.
Very democratic. The people have spoken.
Yeah, they love him.
And then they named the city after.
Huh. Well, what an
Or
honor.
he named the city after. I don't know.
It's in his name.
It's in
Anyway,
his name.
yeah, somebody did that. All right. Well, you've worked on almost every continent. You have not worked in Africa.
Africa and Oceania, and Antarctica, yeah.
Okay. Did you ever go to Antarctica?
No. No, but I have been on the African continent.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, you went to South Africa.
Right. Yeah, I went to South Africa just for 3 weeks.
Are you the kind of person who keeps track of the number of countries that you've visited?
I hate those people, like people who know that right away.
Yeah.
You know, they'll go out of their way to do one more country,
Yeah.
and they'll use that word.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. I overheard this guy once saying you could do Belgium in 2 days. What? Do what to Belgium exactly? But I have counted before, and I'm around 30 or something. I don't know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Actually, I thought it would be more for you because you're quite well-traveled.
I like to hunker down.
Yeah.
I hated leaving Buenos Aires. For 4 years, I barely saw anything else in Argentina. I thought Buenos Aires was a gift that kept giving.
I've never been. Is that so? But you have lived in quite a few places. Is Buenos Aires at the top then of your international living experience? Is that your favorite place to have lived?
It could be. A little bit of a side note, because of the military junta in Argentina for a long time, a lot of culture had to go underground because people were being tortured and kidnapped and killed. And so a lot of, especially if it was connected to kind of leftist or, so a lot of stuff was underground, and there's this legacy of that. So it's really hard to find cool stuff. Mm-hmm. And the longer I was there, the more cool stuff opened up to me. But out of anywhere I'd lived, it was the hardest to find because places were, and I don't think even Argentines are conscious of this. I just think it's there's this hard to find certain kinds of things. There won't be a sign. It'll be, my favorite music venue was an anonymous looking house. And you would have no idea. And it took 2.5 years to find the place.
So how did you find that?
It was there was an article in the Wire magazine about a great magazine out of the UK about avant-garde music. It's been around a long time, and they had a great article about the history of improv music in Buenos Aires, and they interviewed some kind of old-timers who'd been active in that scene for a long time, and just then hunting those people down and seeing where they were playing and piecing it together. But if that article hadn't come out, I don't know if I would have been able to find this really lovely music scene that exists there.
Yeah, that's cool. So you like having to work for it a little bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's more rewarding, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Same with that kind of music. Like it's also a little more work to get into, and I think it's more rewarding as a result. Yeah.
All right. So when you were working abroad, you were working as a teacher, teaching international students in high schools. How were you able to? Did you have a method for connecting with students of that age, like high school kids, teenagers between, well, high school age, right? So 14 to 18.
I mean, the little quip I came up with was you have to treat them like adults, but remember that they're children. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're children, and I don't exactly treat them like adults. But yeah, I think respecting what teenagers say and like really listening and kind of reacting to them and respecting that, especially in school, I don't think they're used to that. And I think it's really, yeah, it's a great start to building that relationship. So like my first rule in class is always don't ask permission to go to the bathroom. You are not allowed to ask permission to go to the bathroom. And it's sort of a silly thing and it gets laughs and I tell this little story to go with it. But I think it establishes this idea that, you know, just I trust you, just go. And, you know, and also other teachers will say, well, what if they're just going because they're tired? Or, well, then that's a valid reason to get up and walk around, isn't it? Isn't that what you as an adult would do? Like
splash some water on their face or something?
Just change of scenery for, yeah, exactly. And I think as adults, we're allowed to make those decisions often, not always. And I think we should be better about teaching children and teenagers how to make those decisions themselves, and we have to respect that and accept that we won't always agree. You know.
And it never caused any chaos or disruption?
I had one class where I had to retract that rule because they were egregious in their abuse of that. But no, for the most part, no. You know, it was always good, and I think other teachers might have been uncomfortable with how many kids were getting up and leaving. You know, a few every period. I'm not talking about the whole class or anything. But I just never had a problem with that. I always thought, yeah, you should have that right, and you have to choose when's an appropriate time. And sometimes if kids would get up when other kids were presenting or something, or you know, when kids get up at the exact wrong moment, that's a conversation to be had. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those were some tricks that I would have to. But they were genuine. Like I really felt that also, that it's wrong to make kids ask to go to the bathroom or to not treat kids like they deserve respect, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good rule. And your students, yeah, they were from all over, right? They could be from anywhere in the world as students at an international school. Did that create any challenges in terms of teaching or the way that the classroom functioned, like the way that the students got along or did not get along with each other?
Yeah, of course. It's a different context. We call them third culture kids. Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah, but you could explain it.
Basically, kids who've live abroad or travel a lot, and they're not migrants. They're from an economically stable or privileged class. But most of their lives are spent outside of the country of their birth or their passport or whatever. So, you know, you have kids who, if you ask them where they're from, they might say they're French, and they were born there, but they haven't lived there since they were 1 year old, and when they speak English, they speak with an American accent, and all the kids kind of have this, and they've lived in more countries than any of us. Uh-huh. And I think one challenge is finding a common ground. I think, you know, when you're teaching in class and you're looking for context and you have kids from all different types of backgrounds, even though they're all third culture kids, you don't really know what their knowledge base is like, especially with academic knowledge. Mm-hmm. But they're very resilient kids, and they're really supportive. I think you see less bullying. Maybe I'm naive, but I think there's less bullying. Most of the kids are used to being the new kid, mm-hmm. or feeling kind of alone. So you'd see a new kid come and be awkward for a day or two, and then it's like they've always been there. And it's really nice to see kids knowing how to do that and kind of nurture a little bit. So it's a fun group to work with.
Mm-hmm. And they're okay. The kids are all right. I mean, this is Generation Alpha, right? that you would have been teaching?
I don't know. Were they millennials? I don't know.
Z,
Something.
Generation Z, maybe Alpha. Alpha is they're teenagers now. I think they're in their early teens.
Well, the last, my last 2 years of teaching was at a school in Chicago, so not international school. And I don't know what, I guess those kids, the oldest one, they'd be like 20 now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know
2
what
years.
generation that.
I think that's Alpha. Maybe they're young Generation Z. Or, the
I don't know what any of it means. Really.
But what I want to ask is, are they okay?
They're okay. Kids are all right.
Yeah. Okay.
Kids are
good.
all right.
Good. So we can check that off the box and move on. The kids are fine. So, working in all these, living and working in all these different countries presents a lot of challenges, right? In
Sure.
terms of culture shock would be the most immediate one that you experience when you move to a new country. Can you tell me about some culture shock moments that you remember, anything that stood out that you experienced in any of the countries you moved to?
This is not going to be a satisfying answer, I think. But the longer I was abroad, the more I put weight on the things you don't notice. Mm-hmm. And an example would be like when I came back to Chicago once to visit, and I was in the grocery store, and someone walked past me with about 3 feet of space between us, and they looked at me and sort of sheepishly said, "Excuse me," as they like squeezed past, and it felt very natural to me. It made me smile, the interaction, because I completely understood that moment.
Yeah.
And I had this realization that I think I was living in Kazakhstan at the time, but just that grocery store interactions are different, and that takes a toll. It's like when you're walking down the street, you're going to hit someone. How do you handle that situation? What's the etiquette in the supermarket or with a taxi driver? So like just these little interactions.
Holding a door open for someone or
Yes.
not doing it? Yeah.
Exactly. All of those things, I think, aren't intuitive when you're abroad, and it's exhausting to deal with. That's so more than I think the big moments, which off the top of my head I can't even think of any, although I know there are some. It's the compilation of middle to small moments that are challenging, I think.
So how would you deal with culture shock? Did you have any systems for learning how to be more comfortable? Do you have a trick?
That's a good question.
One weird trick?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't. I don't know if I was good at dealing with it. I was stressed, and I would get really bitter at times, and I think like a lot of people. So I think it's like enriching and rewarding, but I remember also just how much it took out of me. Other people probably are better at it, But over time, it just gets better, right? Just by continuing to do it, you pick up a few more words, and then you can string together some sentences in whatever language, and things slowly start getting more manageable. I think the trick is just just continuing to do it. Don't hide from it. Try to lean into it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good trick. Yeah. And speaking of language, so Korea, Argentina, Korea, Sweden, Argentina, Kazakhstan, Brazil, a lot of different languages in that handful of countries.
Yeah.
Did you become fluent in any of these languages?
No, I did not.
Which one do you think that you gained the most proficiency in?
Spanish. And I started with the most proficiency for Spanish. And I think in Korea, we were young. You did better with Korean than I did. And I could order food and say thank you, and that was about it. But I got better with each stop, I think. And in some places like Kazakhstan, and especially where I live, most people speak Russian, and they don't speak English, and they're curious about you and why you're there. It's cold. They don't get a lot of people from other countries, I guess, and So you get a taxi ride or whatever, and they want to talk to you, and they will make you have a conversation. You will understand their question. They will make sure you understand their question.
Yeah.
And so, I got really adept at the same, why I'm in Astana, what I think of Astana, what my profession is, and then I would say I'm from Chicago, and I would often get questions about Barack Obama.
Sure.
Negative in the beginning, and then later it changed, and they were pro Obama. Yeah, whatever.
Pro Obama.
Pro Obama.
How about Portuguese? That's the last foreign country that you lived in.
When I
how's your
lived there, I got
Portuguese?
by on speaking Spanish slowly, and then slowly adapting my accent to make it sound a little more Portuguese, I think. I was happy. A lot of times people thought I was Argentine, which means their Spanish
Yeah.
was trash, but also my Spanish was good enough to
Yeah,
trick
that
them.
feels good.
Yeah, felt all right. And then going back and spending more time with my wife's family, I think my Portuguese got a lot better. Though now I've forgotten, I think, a lot. But like a month and a half of immersion there was really good with her people.
Yeah, and then you may have mentioned this before, but your wife is Brazilian. You did mention this, you met while you were teaching there.
Yeah.
And then you two came back here, well, different times. You came to Chicago, but what was it like to come back to Chicago, to come back to the U.S. after working abroad for so long, knowing that you were going to stay? That was your intention when you came back, right? You wanted to settle down here in the U.S.
At least for, years.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I'll stay here forever, but at least for years.
Yeah.
It was hard coming back. I think, I think it was humbling professionally because I had a really hard time finding a teaching job here. And I lucked into something that I was pretty happy with. But, then the learning culture is really different, and it's a lot. It's a lot to readjust to life back. And I think anyone who's lived abroad can relate to this. Being abroad can be exhausting, whatever. And I had some really lonely periods and all this, these kinds of problems that come with being outside of where you're from. So coming back, it's easy to think it's going to be so easy, and
Yeah.
it's kind of the same feelings all over again of being lonely, and you don't have a community anymore. I didn't. I have friends, but I wouldn't say a community.
They get old. Everyone gets older, and they spend more time with their families. They've got, it's not like when we were 20 years old or something. They're married, working. They've got children, so that there's less time to be part of a community, right? Or that at least that's what they think.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
And then you naturally, your community is like people who are going through similar things, like maybe similar work or a connection because you live next door to each other, whatever it is. But if you've been spending the last few years of your life in Kazakhstan or whatever, like there's not a community of people who were just doing that who are now readjusting. So you're kind of starting from zero, and you have to create some space for yourself, and then then you can connect with people.
There's got to be one other in Chicago. I bet you could find somebody else who just recently came back from Kazakhstan.
I'm sure there's a few.
But they're not.
It's just harder.
As easy to find.
It's just harder.
Right. So that's reverse culture shock, right? Getting
Yes.
back into the saddle of living in your own country.
Yeah.
And aside from things like the emotional side of it, what else takes used to in terms of? Wait, what kind of sentence did I just make?
A terrible one. Awful.
What else do you have to get used to when you're coming back to the U.S.?
Well, when you're abroad, you also have this kind of privilege of distance. I could sit in Argentina and Buenos Aires, and they could have all these ideological and political crises, and they're not mine. Or in Kazakhstan, and I can observe it, but I'm not a part of anything. And,
Right.
And it's easy to be that in a way. I'm powerless. And then you come back, or for me, I come back here, and there's a lot of cultural things that I find repulsive and that I really hate. And and it's why I went abroad probably in the first place, So then coming back and seeing that these things they seem to have gotten more, like the thing more pronounced, or maybe it's because I was in other places and now I just noted that, feeling more, and I think that's hard because I do feel more ownership here of culture,
Yeah.
and I feel more inclined to speak out, and I think people find that annoying because people don't like to constantly be reminded of things that are not working well or are wrong. But I think people here need to hear that more, and I'm annoying that way. So
Tell me
that's hard.
one of the things that you despise or that bothers you.
I think, one easy thing to point at is like our healthcare situation, but really it's what that symbolizes. Is I think there's this attitude here that kind of everyone's in things on their own and we can never help each other. Like being selfish is good. Being a greedy pig is a positive thing in this culture. And I find that repulsive. It's disgusting. And also the discourse here is often that, well, that's how human nature is. It's like, well, it's actually not. This is a very American thing. I suspect it's a result of Cold War era ideological wars and things where we've overemphasized certain things. I just find it frustrating, I find it frustrating to hear people complain about crime or homeless people while also, just wanting to hide out in the suburbs and vote in such a way that those people receive even less support from our system and society, and get less opportunity. And I find stuff like that just draining to hear about and frustrating and sad,
Okay. So yeah, that. If you were to make a full list of things that you despise,
It would take a while.
coming home is a challenge, for sure. With you, there's a lot that you have to deal with. But you've been back for a few years now, 3?
3 years.
Seems to be going well.
It gets better.
Yeah.
It always gets better.
Yeah.
I think,
with
every
time.
day.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you said about culture shock too. Yeah.
The last time I moved back to the States, it took me about 2 years before I felt good, and then I left. I think it's best. This is some other advice for people. I think if you're going to move abroad, the best time to do it is when you're happy. If you're happy and that idea still appeals to you, go for it. If you only want to do it when you're unhappy, you should probably stay home. That would be advice I also have for people.
I would agree on that, and we've talked about this before. But if you're unhappy now, you're not going to be happy just because you're in a different place.
You'll be less happy, probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Moving won't solve the
Does
problem.
not solve problems.
And, yeah, moving abroad especially might not. It could be more challenging. Okay, and this is your city. This is your hometown.
It is, yeah.
Chicago. What do you think about Chicago? This is the second city, as they used to say. I don't know if they still say that.
They still do.
It's the Windy City,
Technically the third city now, but
the
yeah.
third city, but still the second city by name. What do you love about Chicago?
I think Chicago is a great mythology, and I think when people think of Chicago, I don't know what. You're not from Chicago. Like, do you have an image in Chicago? What's your image of Chicago in your head? Like, what's the character of the city to you?
It's the city of big shoulders. It's the hog butcher to the world.
Yeah.
It's big, beautiful buildings and organized crime and deep dish pizza. I mean, those are the first things I think of, even though all those things change.
When I think that's kind of where I was going, especially city of big shoulders, this kind of working class city.
Yeah.
Neighborhoods, like kind of neighborhood people, and because neighborhoods are kind of like villages, and Chicago's so segregated that, and that's a terrible thing, but it also leads to these things where like you'll be walking in a neighborhood and every sign is not in English, and I think that's a wonderful thing that there's you can ride the L for 15 minutes and feel like you're getting a bit of a different country because it's an immigrant city. But I also think a lot of that image has changed, and the longer I'm here, the more I see that, and I think a lot of people here we like to cling to this sort of mythology that we grew up hearing about of tough working class people.
Yeah.
With these really dumb accents, that kind of thing. And you just don't. I don't know if that really is Chicago anymore. But sometimes you see a trace of it, and that's really wonderful. So I like the mythology of Chicago. I like the fact that it's an immigrant city. People, my in-laws were just in town, and they were asking, "What's Chicago food?" And it's like, well, tacos, Mexican food in general, and Chinatown has some great spots, and Little Saigon. And I start thinking it's all ethnic food, and we don't have like much. Other people would punch me for saying this, but I don't think we have much like great original food. Italian beef. I mean, this is kind of junk food, but like we have great ethnic food. We have great immigrant food, and I think that's the coolest thing about Chicago is that it's an immigrant town. Was that your question? What do I like about Chicago?
Yeah.
It took me a long time to get there. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. And I can vouch for the ethnic food aspect of it.
It's delicious.
This is a great city to eat in.
It is.
Because of all that variety. And we had dinner in Chinatown last night.
We had a really good dinner in Chinatown last night.
Fabulous dinner. Dumplings, all these great dumplings, lamb, coriander, Chinese soup dumplings. Delicious. But we're not going to give it away to we don't want even more people flooding that restaurant.
It's a top secret restaurant.
Yeah.
If you Google best dumplings Chinatown Chicago, it does not. It is not the first thing to come up.
You definitely won't find it. Number one result, top of the page. Food here is great. What was the hardest part of coming back to not just America but to this city? Was there anything that you had to get over? Again, not like a loneliness or any kind of emotional aspect, but was there anything you really didn't like about this city that you... Yeah, tell me. Reveal.
I think anyone who spent time with me abroad would roll their eyes because I started getting obsessed with this issue, I think, when I lived in Sweden because it's better. But you know where I'm going?
I think I have an idea of where you're going.
Car culture.
Yeah.
Car culture is offensive. It's repulsive to me. And the fact that everyone thinks it's okay is, so I find that really frustrating as a cyclist, public transportation user. The discourse around transportation issues is infuriating to me. I should add that, as a caveat, it was infuriating everywhere I've lived, other than I think Scandinavia, but it's worse here in the sense that, like in Buenos Aires, I'd see a subway train rolling away just as I was arriving, and I would think, God damn it, I'm definitely going to be late because I have to wait 12 minutes for the next train because I've got Chicago brain. And then 2 minutes later, another train comes. And people here act like it's a huge accomplishment that trains come every 7 to 10 minutes. It's like, no, we should be ashamed of this. This is shameful that we're this terrible at it, and it's this underfunded while there's these massive traffic jams outside and 40,000 people every year in the U.S. losing their lives to cars. It's insane to me. It's disgusting. But
when I was living in Shanghai, I would occasionally the first week that I was there, and I had to catch a train, and I would run to get it, and then I could see people looking at me. I could feel the eyes turn,
why?
And I'd wonder, what is it? I'm trying to get the train, but I had that going there from New York mindset where it's like, if I don't get this, it's going to be 12, 15 minutes before the next train, but then a minute or two when there's another one, and I would realize, I do not need to run to catch these trains. And I would later see other white folks or international people doing the same thing, and then having the same realization.
Well, God, that's in China, right? And China's invested heavily. I mean, if you ever look at miles of subway track by country or whatever, the U.S. was the leader in the 50s, back when the U.S. was doing things and thinking ahead instead of just being this corrupt, rotting whatever. But China went all in the 21st century, and now they're well beyond us. But when Buenos Aires' subway is Buenos Aires is not a well-funded city. You know, there's terrible economic crises down there, but they can still do that. You know, all you have to do is just decide that the health of your community and society is more important than someone's right to sit absolutely still
In a
in a
tank.
controlled environment, putting other people around them at great risk. Like,
In their own personal bus.
you just have to set your priorities right. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like that. It's not just Chicago. That's all over the U.S. For the most.
Chicago is one of the better places, actually, right, with public trans anyway.
Yeah, so you're a big cycling enthusiast.
Mm-hmm.
You own several bikes, some bikes that fold, some bikes that do not. Do you have any kind of like fantasy bike trip? What would you love to do on a bike?
Yeah, everything. I mean, I think my number one fantasy bike trip is a safe bike trip. You know, I love cycling and public trans because one reason I love it is it puts me in contact with people around me. Like biking, one time, you just end up in funny conversations with people at red lights or whatever, and I really enjoy that. But I don't like the fact that you're really constantly almost being killed by people who think that your life is worth less than 2 seconds of their time. So you're constantly being threatened by psychopaths, and it's draining. So I think my dream bike trip is just that. It's just a safe bike trips. I prefer urban riding myself. I've done some cool longer trips. So I also think it'd be cool if there was like a bike highway. Right? They've talked about converting parts of Route 66 into a bike trip or a bike path, so you could ride Chicago, St. Louis. I think that'd be really a fun trip.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I did a bike trip from Busan, Busan,
yeah.
Korea to Seoul. We didn't get all the way there, me and my friend, but that was a lot of fun. None of that was, that was not urban at all. But I think it's amazing that you can do that. You know, take a bike all the way from one end of the country to another. It would be very cool to do that in the U.S.
I'm told it's actually it's mostly that you could take bike paths most of the trip across the U.S. They just haven't connected them. So like you might 20 miles on a bike path and a mile or two off to connect to another one. That's what I've read anyway. But, yeah, that'd be a fun trip too. I'd love to do that trip.
Yeah. Do you have a dream bike?
Like one that exists that I can't afford?
Yeah.
No. Sorry. I think it'd be cool to have an e-bike.
Oh yeah.
I would like an e-bike. I think that'd be really cool. But again, only with safe infrastructure. I would not. When I'm in the city, I don't even like to go fast because it's more dangerous. So I'm very careful. But
Do you have a mirror?
I don't. I should. As I'm getting older, my neck doesn't move too well.
Or you could get one of those helmets with the little mirror, rear view mirror.
Yeah,
That would help. Then you don't have to.
I
you
could
don't
get
have
one
to
of
look
those.
bad. So safety.
Yeah.
If safety is a priority for you,
That'd be a really cool Christmas gift for me. From
okay,
a friend, maybe.
So take note. If Pete's on your nice list, he needs a rear view mirror for his bicycle.
There it is.
Okay, from a friend or a family member. What about working from home? You're not teaching anymore. You're not in a classroom. You're working your current job remotely from home. What's it like to work from home for you?
In some ways, it's wonderful, and in some ways, not. I wouldn't trade it for going to a place. I think the best part is sleep. I sleep as much as I need to. That's really good, and there's a little more flexibility. But I do find I don't have enough human interaction. I feel my brain going kind of soft. When I started, I was really good about going for a walk, every hour or two if I felt stuck. And the longer I do it, the more I kind of just want to get it done with. So then at whatever time, 5 or whatever, I can be free to read or just feel free. But then I find my brain is mush and I haven't talked to anyone. And so I think the hardest part is the lack of that kind of stimulation of having colleagues and people. And teaching had too much of that because you were dealing with hundreds of people every day.
Yeah.
But now it's probably too far in the other direction, but day to day I feel much better than I did as a teacher. Not saying I prefer this work, but just feel better at the end of the day.
Yeah, you have a little more, well, sure, you probably have more energy.
Yes.
Yeah, you have a little more time to sleep, don't have to commute, you know, that's a money saver and a time saver. You're happy with it for now?
I am. Quality of life is better.
Yeah.
I think I prefer teaching as a profession, but my quality of life is better, and I like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to do something that I find unethical. You know, so that's one thing I like about education is I can at least tell myself that I'm doing things that are not unethical.
You're making a difference.
I don't tell myself that.
I'm telling you now. I'm sure hundreds, if not thousands of students would tell you the same thing. One day, I bet you're going to have a student track you down and say, Mr. Stedman, you changed my life.
Is that right before the knife goes in?
Okay. So if there's an ideal job for you out there, what is it? What's your dream job?
I think this thing Paula and I are working on is part of it, but you know, I think for me, my dream job is multiple jobs. I think I've always fantasized about that, like 25% one thing, 25% something completely different, and so on. So like in a perfect world, I would be able to cobble things together, because it just gets boring. It's like carpal tunnel syndrome of the brain, having a job. Even teaching, which is pretty dynamic, and there's a lot of different things going on. You have to, you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that work. After a while, it's just the same, feels like the same thing every day, and that sucks. You know, that's not natural and that's not human. But
well, so part of your dream job, ideal job, is what you're working on with Paula. And this is a fairly new
venture. Yeah.
venture. Yeah, thank you. So draw that out a little bit for me. Tell me what you two are doing.
So we were going to a lot of fairs, art fairs and things, and just thought, why don't we do this? So there's a Brazilian street artist who we both really like, and we reached out to him and agreed to sell some prints of his and some originals of his. And then there's this Chicago artist I already mentioned. You know, and we looked at it and also thought of how, and this was part of my interest in education too, is I think mostly our imaginations, or a lot of times our imaginations are limited by what's easily available to us. And so I think our artistic intake is, you know, what, Netflix, Hulu,
Yeah.
Spotify, you know, and it's
Prime,
yeah, right.
YouTube.
And people who read the same New York Times bestsellers, you know, and people don't really, I don't think people have a broad, diverse access to art. And I think we wanted to just add to that. I think we just felt like this would be really cool to be like, you know, at a really small level, just trying to curate and help show people cool stuff that they might not otherwise see. So some of the secondhand art we sell and the books is meant to kind of offset the financial risk of working with the artist, because we try to be really favorable to the artist, which is terrible for business. But I think it's more fun this way, and then trying to be creative in how we can kind of not lose money on this project. But it's really fun, and I did one fair, and it was really awesome to talk to people buying books, just to hear why they were interested and what they were interested in, and just people are interesting. And you know, when you put kind of, you know, I said with the books, I focus on stuff that maybe you can't get at the library, and that's a little more unusual. And then seeing what people are drawn to, and then hearing why it's interesting.
So all the selling of the art and the books that you're doing now is at art fairs, book fairs, things like that.
Yes.
Do you? Is there any plan to have a store or a shop or?
I think we would love to. I don't know long term. I think the cost of having brick and mortar is really high, and something I noticed. You know, I think our price points are low, And part of it is because, why doesn't everyone have original art at home? And it's because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And same with prints and things. So our idea was to try to make it affordable and try to keep those price points maybe so that more people have access. And with the books as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, maybe a brick and mortar might not allow for that. So I think we're going to have to spend at least the first year seeing how this goes and then if that's viable.
What about a website?
Yeah, well, the Instagram's coming. That's a Paula project. She's savvy with that stuff. So we'll start with that, and then selling on eBay, I think, as well. But I think we would love to have a brick and mortar. In line with our thinking, it could help because our idea would be to make money, have like three businesses that are like 33.3% viable. Mm-hmm. And if you have, so a cafe and the art and the used books, with all three of those things, maybe we could pull that together by having, curated high quality stuff. Maybe we can pull it off.
You're going to need a barista in that cafe.
Yeah, so whoever's thinking of buying me a helmet with a mirror can please also apply for a job.
I would like to apply for that job.
Whoever's buying me a helmet with a mirror, please apply for that job.
If that's what it takes to get the job, I guess I guess I'm willing. Is there any work behind us that's made by the artists that you mentioned?
Actually, yeah. These are both Jorge, the Brazilian street artist. Those are portraits of me and Paula.
And these are his initials? Jorge.
JTG. JTG, yeah. It's actually Georgie. I just assume it's Jorge. And now Paul and I have agreed that he just seems like a Jorge, but in Portuguese, that's pronounced Georgie.
Oh, okay.
So apologies to any Georgies out there.
Good to know. So we have portraits. This is you. This is Paula. And everything back here is his?
No, just those two.
Oh.
Most of the rest of these are from Project Onward. A couple different artists from Project Onward, which is a really great nonprofit nearby in Chicago.
You're in Chicago.
Yeah, really cool stuff. Recommended.
Right. Okay. Anything else that you want to say about that particular venture?
I'm good. Thanks.
Well, let me ask you this: how ignorant or not are you about the country of Canada?
I've heard of Canada, and I'm a kind of an admirer.
Oh, okay. So you're not ignorant.
Not totally ignorant, no.
Okay. I'm going to put your knowledge of Canada to the test in a segment that we do in every episode of Work in Progress called Canadian Trivia.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Are you prepared?
Wayne Gretzky. Let's do it. Gordie Howe.
Okay. This is Canadian Trivia, and now usually in this segment, I will ask the guest the question, and they will give me the answer.
Okay.
I want to try something a little bit different with you today. We're going to do this Jeopardy style. Are you familiar with Jeopardy, the long-running quiz show?
Yeah.
Aired on television. Continues to air. Alex Trebek was the host until he passed, and now I believe it's Blossom or maybe someone else. They were sharing the spotlight as the host for a little while, and now maybe it's that
Ken
guy,
Jennings?
Ken Jennings, yeah, permanent host.
Yeah.
But you know the show, and so basically the way that works is I give you the answer, and you provide me with the question. Answers must come in the form of a question. I think that's how they state it in Jeopardy.
Okay.
So you're good with that?
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
Okay. So let's try this out here.
So what is? Who is that?
Yep.
Okay.
You got it. Who, what, when, where.
Yeah.
What am I missing? Why, how, and so on. Okay. Question 1.
Sure.
This is Canadian Trivia, Jeopardy style. Question 1. Lethbridge, Alberta.
Easy, because I'm from Chicago, which is the Windy City of the United States of America, and Lethbridge, Alberta is the Windy City of Canada.
Okay, so
Oh, shit. What Canadian city is nicknamed the Windy City?
okay, excellent. Yeah, yeah, good. Nice job. You're 1 for 1 so far. Question 2. The St. Lawrence River.
What is the second longest river in Canada?
Correct. On a roll. Question 3. New Brunswick.
What is the only officially bilingual language province in Canada? Is that correct?
That is correct. All right. You're a pro. Question 4. Poutine.
Which, side question, would you call poutine a street food?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. Which Quebecois street food is named after a slang French word for mess or the mess? Is that about right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, so poutine means a mess in the local French slang of Quebec. Yeah, and I guess it's I don't have enough travel experience in Canada to know if it's a street food or not, but I bet it started that way.
Yeah,
That's something I should look into and know. So, yeah, thank you for...
I first learned about and tried poutine actually in South Korea. Our good Canadian friends, Trevor and Stefan, turned me onto it and told me that factoid about the name as well.
Yep.
Maybe.
Okay. Final question.
Sure.
This question, you're 4 for 4 so far. This question is for all the maple syrup. It's the final question. And the answer is Montreal.
Which Canadian city hosted the Summer Olympics in 1976?
Boom. You were absolutely correct. Congratulations to you. This is the first time I've ever tried that, Jeopardy style, and flawless. Absolutely flawless.
Huge brain.
5 for 5. Okay, I want to say thank you for being a guest on this podcast of mine. I want to congratulate you on your perfect 5 out of 5 score in Canadian trivia. And the last thing that I like to do on the podcast is just give you a minute to express whatever you want to express. I'm giving you the last word. Oftentimes, the guest will thank me for inviting them to be on the podcast. They'll compliment me and my role. They'll tell me that I have asked some very probing, thoughtful questions, that I was a good listener, that they were impressed with the preparation that I put into the episode. They might, take your pick of things that you want to compliment me on, if that's what you choose to do with your time. It's your time. And then also, if you have something like a website coming, and anything that you want to say plug, you could do that.
Okay. Well, that stuff will be plugged when it's available.
Okay.
I will ask you to maybe
maybe
add
I'll
the
post
link.
it later
That'd
for
be cool.
sure.
In the meantime, I'd just like to really thank you for how well prepared you were for that, how charming you were, how well you counseled me on how to behave in this beforehand. You told me to do this at some point. Said hand motions work really well.
Hand motions are big.
On the camera. So I appreciate all of that and just your general, genius. There aren't many perfect people in the world, and here's 2 of them. It's a rare moment. So I thank you for being my equal in perfection.
It's nice to finally have somebody at my level in perfection. It's like they say, it's lonely at the top, right? Well, you and I know better than anyone. Well, thanks again, Pete, for your time, for being a friend, and well done.
Cool.
Yeah,
All right, man.
nice work. That's a wrap. You feel good about that?
Yeah, I feel okay. You?
Yeah. You were incredible. You were amazing.
I am amazing.
The perfect guest.